The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the most important room in the known universe. It was older than most civilizations. Its walls had seen 10,000 years of deals, treaties, and careful agreements between species. Every major decision that shaped the galaxy had been made in this very room. But today, something was wrong. Ambassador Zyrith of the Volcani Dominion stood at his podium. His skin was translucent, and it changed colors based on his emotions. Right now, it was shifting between confusion and alarm. He had just finished delivering what he believed was a very generous offer to the humans. The offer was simple. Humanity would give up 60% of their colonies. They would accept limits on their technology. They would become observers in the council, not members. In return, the combined fleets of 12 species would not destroy Earth. By galactic standards, this was actually kind. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. They were babies in a universe of ancient powers. They should be grateful for any offer at all. The human delegation sat quietly across from Zyrith. Their leader was a woman named Katie Monroe. She was not impressive to look at. Average height. Brown hair, tied back in a simple style. She wore a plain gray uniform. Nothing about her suggested power or importance. The Volcani had expected the humans to beg. They had expected tears. They had prepared for desperate offers and emotional pleas. Instead, Katie Monroe smiled. "No," she said. The single word echoed through the massive chamber. Translation devices across 100 different species tried to process what she had said. Surely there was some mistake. The Moradi delegate, a being made of living crystal, actually cracked from the shock. Small fractures appeared across his surface. Ambassador Zyrith's skin turned deep purple. This color meant distress. "I'm sorry," he managed to say. "Perhaps the translation system has made an error." "You cannot mean." "I mean no." Katie's voice remained pleasant. She sounded almost cheerful. "We decline your offer. We will not negotiate." Silence filled the chamber. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. High Chancellor Vethrek rose from his throne. The throne was made of living metal that moved and shifted beneath him. Vethrek was ancient and terrible. He had crushed rebellions across the galaxy. He had ordered the destruction of entire worlds. His voice alone had ended species. "You understand," he said slowly, "that refusing means war. It means the end of your kind. Your species numbers only in the billions. We command trillions." Katie Monroe began gathering her documents. They were actual paper documents, which the council found strange. Most species had stopped using paper thousands of years ago. She tucked them neatly into a leather bag. "We understand perfectly, Chancellor," she said. "That is exactly why we are not negotiating." She nodded politely to the room full of aliens. "Earth thanks the Council for its time. We will show ourselves out." She walked toward the exit. Her delegation fell into step behind her. Not one of them looked back. Not one of them showed fear. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted at each other. Screens lit up with urgent communications to homeworlds. Ambassador Zyrith's skin cycled through colors so fast that he looked like a broken light display. The Moradi delegate had to be carried out by medical staff, his crystal body cracking further from stress. High Chancellor Vethrek watched the human delegation disappear through the massive doors. His ancient face showed no emotion, but inside, something cold was forming. He had crushed countless species. He had never once been refused. This was not supposed to happen. In the corridors outside the chamber, Katie Monroe walked calmly. Her delegation matched her pace. None of them spoke until they reached their shuttle. Once the doors closed, her assistant, a young man named Danny Cruz, finally let out a breath. Did that just happen? It did. Katie sat down and closed her eyes for a moment. Send the signal to Admiral Patterson. Tell him we're moving to Phase 2. They will attack us, Danny said. They have 800 capital ships. We have 47. 47 that they know about. Katie opened her eyes. There was steel in them now. We've been preparing for this moment for 30 years, Danny. Long before we ever showed ourselves to the galaxy. They think we are children who just learned to walk among the stars. They are wrong. Back in the council chamber, the chaos was starting to organize itself into something more dangerous. The Vulcani were demanding immediate military action. The Morati wanted sanctions and blockades. Other species were calculating how they might benefit from humanity's destruction. High Chancellor Vethrak raised one hand, and the room fell silent. The humans have made their choice, he said. His voice was cold and final. They have refused the mercy of the Council. They have chosen extinction. We will grant them their wish. Cheers erupted from some delegations. Others stayed quiet, uncertain. A few wondered if perhaps they were missing something important. In a far corner of the chamber, Ambassador Shenley of the Velkith watched everything with careful eyes. The Velkith were a small, peaceful species. They had no great fleets. They had survived in the galaxy by being useful to larger powers and staying out of conflicts. Shenley had studied humans. Not many had. Most species considered humanity too young and too weak to matter. But Shenley had read their history, had watched their broadcasts, had learned about their wars, their struggles, their endless ability to survive against terrible odds. Something about the human refusal felt wrong. Not wrong as in mistaken. Wrong as in planned. No species faced certain destruction with that kind of calm. No delegation walked away from an ultimatum with smiles on their faces. Unless they knew something the Council did not. Shenley quietly slipped out of the chamber. There were messages to send, questions to ask. The Velkith would not join this war. Not until they understood what the humans were really doing. Because Shenley was certain of one thing. The humans had not refused to negotiate out of pride or stupidity. They had refused because they were not afraid. And in a galaxy ruled by fear, that made them the most dangerous species of all. The countdown to war had begun. Across the stars, fleets were mobilizing. Weapons were being prepared. 12 species were uniting to crush a single enemy. On Earth, people went about their daily lives. Children went to school. Shops stayed open. The news reported on sports and weather and small local events. It was as if they did not know death was coming for them. Or perhaps they simply did not care. Admiral Greg Patterson stood on the bridge of the starship Defiance. He was 62 years old, with silver hair cut short and a face marked by decades of service. Around him, his crew worked quietly, preparing for what every expert in the galaxy said would be humanity's final battle. Through the viewscreen, he could see Earth, blue and green and beautiful, home to 8 billion people who were counting on him. The Vulcani fleet has entered the system, his tactical officer reported. 800 capital ships, 1,200 support vessels. They will reach Earth orbit in 6 hours. Greg nodded slowly. And our forces? 47 ships, sir. The Defiance, 12 destroyers, and 34 corvettes. Some would call those odds impossible. Greg Patterson called them interesting. 3 weeks had passed since Katie Monroe refused the Council's offer. The whole galaxy had watched with dark fascination as humanity made no attempt to run. No attempt to hide. No attempt to send secret messages begging for mercy. Instead, they had simply prepared, and the Council had learned something disturbing. The humans knew how to fight. The first battle happened, near Jupiter's moons. A small human patrol met a Vulcani scout force of 50 ships. The scouts never reported back. Search parties found only wreckage and a single message beacon. The beacon played an old human song about someone named Johnny coming home from war. The second battle went even worse for the Vulcani. 100 of their ships cornered what they thought was a fleeing human convoy. The convoy turned out to be fake. Automated decoys surrounded a minefield of strange design. The mines did not explode. They simply erased things. 73 Vulcani ships disappeared from existence in 4 seconds. Now the full fleet approached Earth. The Council watched through long-range sensors, expecting to see the end of human civilization. Greg Patterson smiled at his viewscreen. Open a channel to the Vulcani flagship. The face that appeared was familiar. Admiral Kethvern, the most famous commander in Vulcani history. He had won the Spiral Arm campaigns. He had never lost a battle. Human, Kethvern said. His translator carried clear contempt. You face 800 warships. Your 47 cannot win. Surrender now, and we may show mercy. No negotiation, Greg replied calmly. That is our position. We do not negotiate. Then you choose death for your entire species. Maybe. Greg leaned back in his chair. But here is something your species never understood about humans, Admiral. We do not win by having more ships. We do not win by having better technology. We win because we are too stubborn to know when we should quit. He ended the communication. Danny Cruz, now serving as executive officer on the Defiance, approached quietly. Sir, the weapon is ready. Good. Greg took a deep breath. This was the moment 30 years of secret work had been building toward. All ships, execute Operation Doorstep. What happened next would be studied by military schools across the galaxy for centuries. The 47 human ships did not attack. They did not run. They simply held their position while something emerged from Earth's moon. Something that had been hidden there for 5 years. Built in complete secrecy, the device was roughly the size of a small asteroid. It pulsed with strange energy. Once, twice, 3 times. And every Vulcani ship lost power at the same moment. Weapons went dark. Engines died. Life support began to fail. 800 capital ships and 1,200 support vessels drifted helplessly in space. Their crews watched in horror as small human corvettes moved between them, calmly attaching tow cables. Admiral Kethvern's face reappeared on Greg's screen. The contempt was gone. Only terror remained. What is this weapon? He demanded. We call it the Quiet, Greg said pleasantly. It disrupts the quantum patterns that make your technology work. Took us 30 years to develop. We started building it the moment we first detected your civilization and realized you would eventually come for us. 30 years? Kethvern's voice cracked. But you only achieved faster than light travel. 40 years ago, yes. We had been watching you for a decade before that, preparing. Greg's smile faded. His voice became serious. You assumed we were primitive because we were young. You assumed we would beg because we were weak. You were wrong on both counts. What will you do with us? This was the question Greg had been waiting for. This was the moment that would define humanity to the galaxy. We will take you home, he said. All of you. Every ship, every crew member. We will deliver you safely to Vulcani space. Kethvern stared at him. I do not understand. We do not negotiate, Admiral. But we also do not kill helpless enemies. That is not who we are. Greg leaned forward. You came here to commit genocide. We stopped you. Now we will feed your crews, repair your life support, and tow you back to your territory. You will tell your people what happened here. You will tell the Council. Tell them what? That humans keep their word. We said no negotiation. We meant it. We said we would defend ourselves. We did. And now we're saying that we are not monsters. Greg's eyes were hard, but not cruel. We could destroy every ship in your fleet with a single command. Instead, we choose mercy. That is the message. That is who we are." The channel closed. On Earth, 8 billion people watched the feeds. They saw the great Vulcani armada reduced to drifting hulks. They saw human corvettes gently moving between the helpless ships, attaching tow lines, delivering food and medical supplies. Katie Monroe stood in her office, watching with tears in her eyes. Not tears of joy, tears of relief. The plan had worked. 30 years of preparation, of secret research, of pretending to be weaker than they were. All of it had led to this moment. Her phone buzzed. A message from Greg Patterson. Just 2 words. Phase complete. She typed back. Phase 3 begins. Prepare for what comes next. Because stopping the fleet was only the beginning. Now came the harder part. Now they had to convince a galaxy that had always ruled through fear that there was another way. The Vulcani ships began their long, slow journey home. Towed by human vessels. Guarded by human crews. Fed by human supplies. It was the strangest victory in galactic history, and it was only the start. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the first time in 300 years. The Grand Chamber, built to show power and strength, now felt weak and fragile. Everything the Council believed had been broken in a single afternoon. High Chancellor Vethrak had not slept in 4 days. His ancient body was failing, but his mind kept racing with the same impossible thoughts. The Vulcani fleet, the most powerful force in known space, had been returned home like lost children. Human ships had towed them gently through space. Human crews had fed them during the journey. Human medics had treated their sick and injured. The message was clear without any words being spoken. We could have killed you all. We chose not to. They are monsters, hissed the Marathi delegate. His crystal body had been repaired, but visible cracks still showed his stress. They have weapons that make our technology useless. They hid these weapons until the perfect moment to strike. They did not strike, said Ambassador Zyrith. His skin was a dull gray of defeat. They never used the weapon to attack. They never made threats. They simply said no and waited for us to attack first. That makes them more dangerous. The argument continued for hours. Some delegates demanded immediate revenge. They wanted every species in the Council to unite against the human threat. Others were more careful. They pointed out that if humans had been building secret weapons for 30 years, they'd probably had more surprises waiting. A few delegates, very quietly, wondered if maybe they had been wrong about these newcomers. On Earth, Admiral Patterson had retired to his family home in Montana. He refused all requests for interviews. The Defiance orbited peacefully above, its crew enjoying well-earned rest. Humanity, having shown its strength, returned to normal life immediately. Stores opened. Children went to school. People argued about sports and entertainment. This, more than anything, scared the Council. Any other species would have used this moment. They would have demanded payment, territory, recognition. Humanity just waited. Katie Monroe accepted only one message from the Council. It came from the Velkith, the small peaceful species that had stayed neutral during the crisis. Their ambassador, Shenley, asked a simple question. Why did you refuse to negotiate? Katie was in her office when the message arrived. Through her window, she could see the Rocky Mountains. Snow covered their peaks. They looked eternal and unchanging. She thought carefully before answering. Because negotiation means compromise, she said finally. And compromise with people who threaten to kill everyone you love is not negotiation. It is surrender in slow motion. We refused to negotiate because the moment we accepted that our survival could be bargained away, we had already lost. But surely some agreement could have been reached, Shenley said. Could it? Katie leaned forward. Your council gave us a choice. Accept slavery or face destruction. There was no middle option. No recognition that we had the right to exist as equals. Just submission or death. She shook her head. We chose neither. You chose war. No, we chose to stand. War was the council's choice. We simply refused to lose it. Shenley was quiet for a long time. And now? What does humanity want? To be left alone. Katie's voice became softer. We are not conquerors, Ambassador. We never wanted any of this. We wanted to explore the stars. We wanted to meet new species and learn about the universe. Instead, we found a galaxy that saw us as prey. She sighed. We proved we are not prey. Now we would like to try again. As equals this time, the Council will never accept that. Then the Council will have to change. Or it will disappear. Katie smiled slightly. We are patient. We have been preparing for hostile contact since before we left our solar system. We can wait as long as we need to. The message ended. Shenley returned to their ship and began writing a very careful report. Humanity, the report concluded, was not a threat to be destroyed. They were not a resource to be used. They were something much more complicated. They were a species that had looked at the galaxy's rules and simply refused to play by them. And that might be the most frightening thing of all. Back in the council chamber, High Chancellor Vithrak finally spoke. His voice was tired, but still carried authority. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years, he said. We have done so through strength, through fear. Every species that rose to challenge us was crushed. This was the natural order. The strong survive. The weak submit or die. He paused, looking around the chamber at delegates from 100 species. The humans have shown us something we did not expect. They are strong enough to destroy us, yet they choose mercy. They could demand our submission, yet they ask only to be left alone. His voice cracked slightly. I do not understand them. I do not know how to fight an enemy who refuses to be an enemy. The chamber was silent. Perhaps, said a small voice from the back, we should stop trying to fight them. Everyone turned. It was a junior delegate from a minor species. She looked terrified to have spoken, but she continued anyway. The humans could have destroyed the Vulcani fleet. They did not. They could have attacked all worlds while our forces were helpless. They did not. They could be making demands right now, and we would have no choice but to agree. Instead, they are waiting. She swallowed nervously. Maybe we should ask them what they actually want. Not with threats. Not with ultimatums. Just ask. Laughter came from some delegates. Others looked thoughtful. High Chancellor Vethrak stared at the young delegate for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Send the message to Earth, he said. Tell them we wish to talk. Not negotiate. Not threaten. Just talk. It was a small step. Perhaps meaningless. But it was the first time in 10,000 years that the Council had approached another species without weapons raised. On Earth, Katie Monroe received the message. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Then she smiled. Phase 3 was beginning. 6 months passed after the battle at Earth. The humans refused to call it a battle. They called it a polite disagreement with a clear ending. The phrase became a dark joke across the galaxy. High Chancellor Vethrak spent those months thinking. The Council's power had always rested on 2 things. First, economic control. Every species needed to trade with the Council to survive. Second, military strength. Any species that refused to follow the rules was destroyed. Humanity had shown complete disinterest in the first. They did not need Council trade. They had built their own networks, their own supply lines, their own economy. And they had made the second pillar meaningless in a single afternoon. What was left? The answer came from an unexpected place. The Velkith, encouraged by Shenley's reports, began quietly trading with human merchants. Nothing dramatic at first. Cultural exchanges, scientific data, small commercial goods. Simple things that did not threaten anyone, but the example was set. Someone was trading with the humans, and the humans were being fair. Other species noticed. The Moratti, despite their public anger toward humanity, sent secret representatives to discuss crystal technology. The Vulcani themselves, embarrassed but practical, asked permission to study the quiet weapon. Not to build weapons, but to develop protection against it. Humanity said yes to everything, freely, without asking for anything in return. "I do not understand," admitted the Moratti representative during one exchange. "You have power over us now. You could demand payment, territory, tribute. Instead, you give away knowledge that could someday be used against you." The human scientist handling the exchange was a cheerful woman named Lisa Park. She laughed at the question. "That is the part you do not understand," she said. "Knowledge is not a limited thing. If you develop better defenses, you are safer. If you are safer, you are less likely to attack us out of fear. If everyone is less afraid, maybe we can actually build something good together. But what about your own interests?" "Our interest is living in a galaxy that is not always at war." Lisa shrugged. "Besides, we are not worried about you building weapons against us. If we can build the quiet, we can build defenses against it. We can build the next thing after that, and the thing after that. We are humans. Creating new things is what we do best." Word spread quickly. The humans were not keeping secrets. They were not building an empire. They were simply existing, offering friendship to anyone who came peacefully, and keeping overwhelming power ready for anyone who did not. The Council's foundations began to shake. A group of smaller species proposed major changes to how the Council worked. They wanted representation based on contribution, not military power. The great powers blocked the proposal, but the vote was closer than anyone expected. 300 years of careful control wobbled because of one simple idea. Maybe strength was not the only thing that mattered. Admiral Patterson, enjoying his retirement in Montana, watched these events with quiet satisfaction. He had known Katie Monroe for 30 years. They had been young officers together, wondering if humanity would survive its first century among the stars. They had built this strategy side by side, refused to play by existing rules, show overwhelming power, then immediately switched to friendship. "Do you think it is working?" he asked during one of her visits to his home. Katie watched the sunset turn the mountains gold and pink. "Ask me in 50 years. These things take time. We might not have 50 years. The Council could still unite against us. They could." She smiled. "But I do not think they will. We have shown them something they have never seen before. A species that does not want to control them. They are not sure how to understand that yet. And if they decide to attack again, then we will be ready. We are always ready." Katie turned to face him. "But I do not think we will need to be. Fear is exhausting, Greg. Eventually, people choose hope instead." Across the galaxy, that choice was slowly being made. On the Velkith homeworld, Ambassador Shenley was becoming something of a celebrity. The small, peaceful species had been the first to reach out to humanity. Now they were seeing benefits that others envied. Human medical technology had cured 3 diseases that had plagued the Velkith for centuries. Human engineers had helped improve their power systems. Human teachers had come to share knowledge freely, asking only for friendship in return. Other species began asking the Velkith for introductions to humanity. Shenley found themselves organizing meetings, dinners, and cultural exchanges almost every day. "Why do you help us so much?" Shenley finally asked a human diplomat. We have nothing to offer you. We are small and weak." The diplomat, a kind-faced man named Ben Howard, smiled at the question. "You were the first to trust us," he said simply. "You reached out when everyone else was afraid. That means more to us than any fleet or territory. But we did nothing. We just asked questions. Sometimes asking questions is the bravest thing anyone can do." The conversation stayed with Shenley for a long time. They had always seen their species as unimportant, too small to matter in a galaxy of great powers. But the humans saw something different. They saw courage in curiosity, strength in kindness. Maybe, Shenley thought, the humans were right. Maybe there were other kinds of power besides weapons and threats. Back on Earth, the changes were quiet but constant. Human ships began carrying passengers from other species. Alien students enrolled in human universities. Trade routes opened that had nothing to do with the Council's controlled networks. Thought it was not a revolution. It was something slower, something deeper. Like water wearing away stone over centuries. High Chancellor Vethrock watched it all happening. He was very old now, and he knew he would not live to see how this story ended. But he was beginning to understand something. The humans had not defeated the Council through war. They were defeating it through patience, through kindness, through the simple act of being better neighbors than anyone had ever been before. And there was nothing in 10,000 years of Council history that explained how to fight against that. The old order was dying. Something new was being born. And humanity just kept smiling, kept helping, kept waiting for the galaxy to catch up with them. 10 years had passed since the battle at Earth. The Galactic Council held its final meeting in the Grand Chamber. The ancient building would become a museum after today, a reminder of what the galaxy used to be before humanity changed everything. The new assembly would meet on a space station orbiting a neutral star. 47 species had worked together to build it. There was no single ruling power, no rankings based on military strength, no threats of destruction for those who disagreed. High Chancellor Vethrak, now ancient and strangely peaceful, stood to give the closing speech. "For 10,000 years, we measured civilization by conquest," he said. His voice was weaker than it used to be, but it still carried across the chamber. "By territory, by the ability to destroy. We built our order on fear, and we believed it would last forever." He paused, looking around the room where so many fates had been decided. "We were wrong." The chamber was completely silent. Every delegate listened carefully. The humans did not defeat us in war. They refused to fight one. They did not conquer our economies. They simply offered better options. They did not demand our surrender. They only asked to be left in peace. His voice carried wonder now. And by doing this, they showed us that everything we believed about power was incomplete. He straightened his old body as much as he could. "The new assembly will not be perfect. There will be arguments, disagreements, failures, but there will be no more threats of extinction. No more forcing species to choose between slavery and death." Something like gratitude crossed his ancient face. The humans gave us this gift. They refused to negotiate for their survival, and by doing so, they freed all of us to negotiate for our futures instead. The chamber fell silent as his words settled over everyone. Katie Monroe sat in the visitors section with Admiral Patterson beside her. Both had gray hair now. 10 years of work had left their marks. But they were both smiling. "Not bad," Greg whispered. "For a species that just wanted to explore, we still do." Katie watched the delegates leaving the chamber. Dozens of species that had once wanted humanity dead were now working toward a shared future. That is the thing about refusing to negotiate. You do not have to be the biggest. You do not have to be the strongest. You just have to know exactly what you will accept and what you will not, and then be stubborn enough to hold on. Human specialty. She smiled. Come on, there is a party at the new station. The Velkith have created something called pizza after trying ours. They are very proud of their version. Is it any good? Terrible. But they are so happy about it that everyone pretends to like it. Greg laughed. Sounds like diplomacy. That is exactly what it is. Real diplomacy. The kind where nobody has to give up anything except pride. They walked together through the ancient doors of the council chamber. Behind them lay 10,000 years of history. Ahead of them was something completely new. Ambassador Shenley was waiting outside. The small Velkith diplomat had become one of the key figures in building the new assembly. They rushed over when they saw Katie and Greg. The station is ready, Shenley said excitedly. The first meeting of the new assembly will be tomorrow. Representatives from 47 species will attend. Everyone is nervous and excited. As they should be, Katie said warmly. This is something that has never been tried before. Do you think it will work? Shenley asked. An assembly based on cooperation instead of fear? Greg Patterson considered the question. He thought about all the battles he had prepared for that never happened. All the weapons humanity had built and never used. All the years of pretending to be weak while building strength in secret. I think it has a chance, he said finally. Which is more than anyone could say before. The humans have a saying, Katie added. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. We have done both. Now we get to see what the galaxy chooses. The three of them walked toward the shuttle that would take them to the new station. Around them, delegates from 100 species were doing the same. Old enemies walked beside each other. Former rivals shared jokes. The air felt different. Lighter somehow. In the grand chamber, workers were already starting to prepare the museum exhibits. They carefully preserved the throne where High Chancellor Vethrek had ruled for so long. They documented the spot where Katie Monroe had simply said no and changed everything. Historians would argue for centuries about what really happened. Some would say humanity had always planned this outcome. Others would argue they had simply gotten lucky. A few would insist that the humans were playing a longer game that no one yet understood. The truth was simpler. Humanity had looked at a galaxy ruled by fear and decided not to participate. They had built weapons not to conquer, but to survive. They had shown mercy not from weakness, but from strength. They had refused to negotiate, not from stubbornness, but from principle. And when given the chance to become the new rulers of the galaxy, they had said no to that too, because ruling had never been the point. On the new station, the first meeting of the assembly began. It was messy and confusing. Delegates argued about procedures and voting rights. Old grudges surfaced. New alliances formed and broke within hours. But nobody threatened war. Nobody demanded submission. Nobody spoke of extinction. It was chaotic and beautiful and completely new. Katie Monroe watched from the observer's gallery, a cup of terrible Velkith pizza in her hand. Beside her, Greg Patterson was already falling asleep, exhausted from the long journey. This was what they had worked for. Not victory, not power, just a chance for something better. That the galaxy had learned a lesson from humanity. The most powerful word in any language was not attack or surrender or negotiate. It was simply no. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything